Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Tackling Data Roadblocks to Power One-to-One Customer Relationships. We're excited you could join us. My name is Jeff Gamet, and I'll be moderating today. Now, we'll be addressing how companies can seize real gains by leveraging first-party data to build one-to-one personalization. And we're happy to be joined today by our three speakers. We have Jason Davis. He's the co-founder and CEO of Simon Data. Scott Grove, Vice President, Marketing Operations at Vimeo. And David Wells, Industry Principal, Media, Entertainment, and Advertising at Snowflake. Now, before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping items. Please note the slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button located in the top right corner of your presentation window. If you need technical assistance, click on the Help widget located on the bottom left corner of your console. And we encourage you to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation using the Q&A widget at the bottom of your console. And we will try to get through as many of these questions as we can during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. And please note that we do capture all the questions. All right, to kick off, I'd like to ask each of our speakers to provide a quick introduction of themselves and their work. Jason, would you go first, please?
Of course, Jeff. And first, David and Scott, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
I'll give a bit of a quick history of my background. My career started as a data scientist. I was working on my machine learning PhD back in a time before deep learning was highly popularized. I always joke it took me about 5 years into my dissertation to realize the value in data isn't in machine learning or the fancy algorithms, it's how it's actually used in practice. And really, my experience working on really high-powered, complex machine learning algorithms really led me to a place to see the other side and the opportunity to bring data and to bring machine learning into applications with real end users. My previous business prior to Simon Data was an ad tech platform called Intuitive. That company was ultimately acquired by Etsy. The technology now drives about half of Etsy's revenue. And the opportunity behind Simon Data came from things we saw at Etsy. In particular, cloud data was emerging in a way that we felt would be incredibly disruptive. While at Etsy, we spent millions of dollars racking hardware and building on-prem data centers. It was very powerful, but incredibly time-consuming, required big bets that many other businesses didn't have. The other opportunity we saw was just really the impact that data could have around optimizing marketing outcomes, multi-channel campaigns and messaging. And really thinking about how to put data in the hands of the right stakeholders to affect increases in lifetime value, increases in return on ad spend, and really just driving top line revenue with the right tools and technology to open up a world of data that previously just couldn't be actioned on.
Thank you for that. And Scott, please tell us some about you.
Hey there, Scott Grove, so Vice President of Marketing Operations at Vimeo. And Jason and David, just wanted to say thank you for the invite today. Really appreciate being able to hop on and chat with you both. So I've got about 25 years of experience in engineering, operations, and leadership roles across a variety of companies and industries. I started off being a mechanical design engineer at the Kenworth Truck Company, moved on to telecom with some stints at AT&T and T-Mobile. Jumped over into manufacturing or back into it at Danaher. Spent quite a bit of time then at Expedia, GoDaddy, Zillow, and now I'm here at Vimeo. In those roles, I've managed highly technical marketing operations teams who own data infrastructure, websites, localization, outbound comms, as well as vendor management. And just when it really boils down to it, I'm just an engineer at heart. Love to solve that next problem that's out there. And most importantly, just make things easier for the people that I work with, and in particular, the marketing.
Great, thanks. And David, please tell us some about you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Jason and Scott for the opportunity to talk with them. So I serve as an industry principal in Snowflake's media and advertising practice. My purview is specifically ad tech and martech, which is inclusive of things like data and identity, as well as third-party SaaS analytic platforms, including CDPs. So in that purview, I work with partners like Simon, as well as the marketers that leverage them to sort of drive things like personalization and activation. Prior to Snowflake, I was actually over the course of my career at different data and identity vendors, and what I saw was the use of data and identity migrating to the cloud, and so that's how I sort of made the transition into Snowflake. First on our marketplace team, where I led the media and advertising vertical. And then as I was moonlighting on the present industry team, I actually fully made that transition last year. So super excited. I totally agree with Scott, incidentally. The ability to solve problems and make things easier, that's sort of where we spend our time too. That's what we love to do. That's one of the reasons we're huge advocates of Simon. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Great, thanks. And thank you to all three of you for making time to join us today. I'm really looking forward to this. So with that, let's just jump right in. And why don't we start with a little background? Jason, how has the data landscape evolved in recent years? And why don't strategies from 5 years ago work today?
Well, let me kick off with a bit of a personal anecdote. When my last business was acquired at Etsy, we were tasked with integrating the platform. And a big part of that was setting the right data foundation in place to power the ad systems that we had developed. This was about a decade ago, a little more than a decade ago. And really step one, if you wanted to build data systems back then, was to buy a cluster of machines and rack them in a data center. And I remember we signed off on a 7-figure commitment. And there was a guy on the engineering team. He showed up with the drill, and the hardware, and he disappeared into Secaucus, New Jersey for months. To rack hardware, and after about 3-4 months' time, he came back, and you could log on to the system. And at that point, you could actually begin doing a little bit of work. Obviously, the cloud has changed everything. Snowflake, coming on the scene. And really being the first, and today the dominant driver in providing cloud agnostic data warehousing has just completely changed the game. Previously, to build this system like I built at Etsy, you needed millions of dollars of budget, buy-in from executives, and a multi-year strategy to even do what today would be considered relatively simple things. Today, for $8, you can spin up a Snowflake cluster and try things out, put a few gigabytes of data in, and see how it goes. It's a complete game changer, and with this, it's really just a seismic shift. And what does this mean for everything downstream? 5 years ago, personalized data-driven marketing strategies were limited to a trickle of behavioral data that were housed in previous generation systems. Today, with technologies like Snowflake leading the way, brands find themselves on sitting on a treasure trove of resources, and some brands are able to tap those effectively, and others still struggle. But really, when you look at the further complexities that are pushing all this, the pandemic put real pressure around online businesses. So many offline businesses went online, and then 2 years after the pandemic, everyone started going back to stores again. And now so many brands have a real mix of online and offline experiences. Vimeo being a great example with the sales team, and fully digital experience at that. And with that, it requires real changes around data management, identity management. Google and Apple are changing cookies. I'm not going to rehash that completely, but that's putting tremendous pressure on first-party data as well. And then finally, you put it all together, and it's still hard. What's going on? Why why does Salesforce feel the need to build a data cloud? Why is there so much effort in the market around making all these things work? And the basic answer is that brands today still struggle tremendously around aligning people, process, and technology. When we look at the problem that we're solving, and the focus of the conversation today is so many brands are a lot closer than they think. They have an enterprise data strategy, they have a capable marketing team, They just really need that last bit of technology, that last bit of process, that last bit of cross-functional alignment, to actually enable true democratization, access, and optimization around the data resources that are within the four walls of their business.
David, do you mind explaining how Snowflake plays into all of this?
Sure. Yeah, I think what Jason said was incredibly well said. I mean, the data landscape, as someone who lived and worked in it, it's changed tremendously over the last 5 years. There's more data. That's a consequence of having greater connectivity, whether you're talking about first-party data or third-party data. Marketers had their touch points with customers and they caught data, 5 years ago, and they supplement that with third-party assets. Most of those third-party assets were, industry standard offline and online providers. Some would say that those were a commodity. I'm not sure I agree with that assessment, but the point is there's much more data today, and there are more unique ways to leverage it. I think that it's not only thanks to the connectivity, it's also thanks in large part due to the cloud and sort of privacy enhancing technologies and ways to collaborate. It's one thing to possess a tremendous amount of data. You have to have the ability to sort of unlock the power of that data, whether you're collaborating with a partner or within your own org, or you have a technology that sits on top of it and makes it accessible. So that's really, really powerful. And we think that's why Snowflake has had the trajectory that it's had today. So you think about things like data shares or data clean rooms or native apps that leverage the power of data and unlock that power of data, and allow marketers to drive things like personalization and activation. And I think that's why we've had as much success as we've had today. And that's part of the reason that we're huge advocates of Simon Data is that, Jason sort of had the foresight to stand up Simon on Snowflake, and it's unlocking a very powerful infrastructure. And it sort of, on the one hand, speaks to a technical persona that can use the warehouse in one way, but also is very intuitive that, is providing very powerful functionality to non-technical personas, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. And Scott, you've built MarTech stacks and optimized these problems for several prominent large-scale consumer-facing brands. How have you seen the evolution of the data landscape?
Well, so if I go back to my time at Expedia, GoDaddy, and Zillow, over the past 10, 15 years, data has always been at the heart of all the teams that I've led who enable marketing strategies. You just literally can't do anything without it. Whether it comes down to your real-time personalization through emails, building audiences, etc. So in the past, we spent a whole bunch of time collecting, moving, and transforming the data so we could get it into platforms that would enable the activation. And I would say, our teams were large as well, engineering teams to make all that happen. And that was for async outbound comms like email, and it also included real-time inbound events like. And over that time, I've seen the technology advance pretty dramatically. From on-premise, we had DB2 and SQL back at Expedia. We had our own data warehouses that were down in Arizona. And I remember, seeing that first deck where someone had proposed the idea of moving up into AWS and how everybody thought that was such a crazy idea. Eventually that's where they ended up. And then we also had inside our data warehouses, we had purpose-built data application hardware setups like Teradata. I remember those were kind of like the Ferrari to the sequel where we were driving Toyota Corollas there. Those were awesome and sped things up. And then to most recently into cloud-based, the next-gen solutions like Snowflake, where we don't need to move the data at all. It just, all the data is right there, and we just put our apps on top of the data. So it's kind of like going back in time where we had everything on-premise, and then we went into the cloud, and now we're kind of back to on-prem again with the Snowflake and Simon Data model that we're talking about today. And just a quick overview of kind of the current capabilities that we've got with our setup between Snowflake and Simon and Vimeo. Snowflake is a very key strategic partner for Vimeo, and it is our primary data warehouse, and we're continuing to invest in that very heavily. And today we're using it to enable digital marketing channels such as web, email, and advertising. And all those are powered directly by all the data that is aggregated within our Snowflake data marts. And then in order to activate that data, we use a variety of third-party vendors, Simon being the most important one of those. And then Simon, we leverage as our CDP to build all of our audiences for our self-serve side of the house. This is, think of the B2C motion within Vimeo. We also use it for all of our advertising, leveraging our first-party data. And we're on the cusp of also connecting it up to our B2B side of the house, supporting our enterprise sales folks by empowering audiences through a platform like Marketo. And this is done through both our real-time and batch data sets. And then in the future, we're looking for vendors that integrate directly with Snowflake and Simon as well, so we can avoid all the ETLs, moving our data in and out of our ecosystem. And that helps tremendously around things like latency. Most recently, security has been huge for us, as I'm sure it is for everybody. And also just reducing the engineering overhead, so we don't need to rely on other engineering teams to support our needs.
Okay, great. So Scott, what new opportunities does this present for brands?
So I'd say, so one example we recently did, we're in the middle of doing with Snowflake, is we're building a modern day recommendation engine where we're leveraging a variety of first-party, third-party data sources, along with several off-the-shelf LLMs, and leveraging Snowflake's native capabilities. And that model, the whole goal of that model was to analyze customer data and then their product usage and what they were and were not doing inside the Vimeo platform, and uncover missed opportunities that where they could basically enhance and get more out of our platform. And the goal there, really, it's a very customer-centric approach where we're trying to set our customers up to be as successful as possible by exposing to them things that they hadn't known about or potentially could leverage within their use of the platform. And then we have another example is just how we're leveraging Snowflake to integrate directly with third-party vendors like Simon. We recently moved into the native app connection. We had a beta running with them. I think we were one of their first customers. And that's up and it's live, and we've got a data set today where we're building audiences. And the beauty of that is we moved from 2-a-day ETL jobs to where we're uploading data into Simon, plus our real-time events, and now it's all there ready for us live, all the data that we need. Then finally, we're continually excited to learn about all the new capabilities that are available on the Snowflake platform. Seems like there's a product release coming out. It feels like almost weekly, but at the very least monthly. And there's a spirit of innovation and growth there that we just really, really appreciate. I mean, every time I talk to someone over there, it's a new capability that we can turn on and leverage. And that came through quite a bit, and that's the recommendation engine model that we just built with them. So, if they can't support something today, we're pretty confident that we just need to wait a couple of weeks, maybe months at the most, and it's going to be there for us. And same on the Simon side, they've been releasing things around identity and real-time events and build connectors for us as we need them. So they're evolving just as fast, and being able to work with vendors that can evolve and stay ahead of us is awesome.
And incidentally, we appreciate it when, partners push us to sort of develop some of those capabilities. And I think that's, what we appreciate about Vimeo. We also appreciate about Simon, right? If there's a gap and we're not knowledgeable about that gap, and they say, hey, have you considered X, Y, or Z, or I have this problem, will you help me solve it? That's part of the reason I think we've evolved as quickly as we have, is that we've had proactive partners that say, hey, we love the platform, I need to solve this problem. And they trust us to help solve that problem, whether it requires like new technologies and capabilities or it's something that we have off the shelf. I think, in Scott's first example, talking about recommendation engines and, first and third party data, obviously Snowflake's value is that you need a platform that parses a tremendous amount of data, and it does it in an efficient way. And then also you need other maybe third-party data sources that'll complement the first-party data that you have. I actually spent a little bit of time on Snowflake's marketplace where we're making some of those differentiated data sets available. So you can do things like, have more advanced content recommendations that will ultimately drive outcomes. And then he talked about, Simon and the native app. And we love Simon and how they've leaned into the Snowflake partnership and having native capabilities. We really see that as, part of the reason that we've made as much progress as possible, is that I think partners like Simon understand that customers want their data to sit in Snowflake, and they want the technology to come to where that data lives and drive that value. And Simon has leaned into that, and we're incredibly appreciative of it. That makes sense.
Yep, that's great. So thanks both of you for that. And really, this sounds like it's an exciting new frontier. So Jason, can you elaborate on CDPs specifically? What are some of the core problems that brands can solve with a CDP?
I think, in some sense, David and Scott, you all just answered half the question for me. When I started talking about CDP, look, I think you look at Vimeo, a great example, of a business that is aligned, marketing and data competencies in a way that have really just, tremendously accelerated execution and outcomes. Yes, Simon plays a role in technology enablement, but look, a brand can only be as effective, as their people and process relative to the systems they have in place. I think Vimeo is a great example, of one of our customers who really just does this better than anyone else. The second dimension around trends, and what the potential is with CDP is just thinking about tools and tool ownership and platform ownership. There's been a complete explosion, in adoption of cloud data platforms, with Snowflake far and away the number one leader here. And the marketing solution isn't to go and build their own data cloud somewhere else. The marketing solution is to ask, how do you actually align the application with the evolving data layer? I say this and it sounds ridiculous, but you look at the big moves that are happening in the category. This is actually happening in the category by the world's largest marketing applications as we speak. And it's, yes, like you can get there in 10 years and you'll be 12 years behind. But the potential, I think, to really look at the foundational investments that so many brands like Vimeo have in their first-party data and unlock that, is truly, is truly a next generation, a phase shift of opportunity, and it's right in front of us. And it's like, if I really summarize the three benefits, first is access to a new world of data. The C in customer data platform stands for customer. But the irony is that CDPs can unlock a lot more data than just customer data. You look at Vimeo with millions and millions of videos on all sorts of content. If I spend 3 hours looking at content, like what was it long form, was it short form, was I using it professionally, was I using it because I was browsing something after hours, all this context on the inventory. Scott came from Zillow, which is another customer of Simon's. You think about, you spent 3 hours looking for homes yesterday. Were they second homes? Were they first homes? Were they rentals? Were they expensive homes? Were they starter homes? Understanding this context, of what's ostensibly non-customer data is foundational. It's a foundational marketing opportunity for segmentation, for personalization, for targeting. And what Snowflake brings to the table and the data assets behind this, is a complete unlock. The second bucket, is moving fast. And look, even if you know SQL, if you have a log on to Snowflake, that doesn't mean you can activate the data or personalize with your database. There's an entire application team, and ultimately the role and the opportunity around CDP is to separate the roles of data from the roles of marketing. The team should come together when you're talking strategy, when you're talking what's a huge new opportunity around offline measurement or attribution analysis or whatnot. And let's talk about what this means for 2024. But when you go to execute it to get a new campaign out the door, you shouldn't have to pull a list of customers or write some custom SQL. The execution needs to be decoupled, so that marketing can run 5, 10, 25 times faster. And the third bucket is really looking at, and Scott talked to some of the bespokeness around some of the recommendation and data science work they're doing. Ask how do you actually align data science and business and marketing outcomes? And I always like to give the example around, predicting churn is useless unless you have a strategy to avoid churn. And this is where the power of a CDP comes into place. And you think about what a connected Snowflake architecture can get you with access to 100 times more data, in real-time context, with a shared technology base that both data science and marketing collaborate on. It's a game changer.
All right, I have a follow-up question for you on that, Jason. So, how about diving into the key differentiation points to seek in a customer data platform? I'm sure that's really valuable to a lot of people.
Right. I mean, the first bucket, far, there are two buckets. One is on the data side and the other is on the application side. Every CDP comes with a data strategy. If you don't understand the data strategy of your CDP, then you should really understand the data strategy of your CDP. And they come in one of three forms. The first form is a CDP that collects all its own data. So it has a tag manager. You put pixels on site. You put an SDK on your mobile. And they own all the collection infrastructure. And if you don't have anything, it's a great place to start. The second bucket are huge marketing clouds, Adobe and Salesforce, that just through the expansive deployment they have, they ultimately just want to own all your data. And then there's a third bucket of composable approaches like Simon Data that are really purpose built to leverage your existing data investments that are in Snowflake today. So as you look at where you are in your life cycle of data, your data strategy, your enterprise data strategy, you need to identify that when making a decision around your CDP. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is really asking, like, is my CDP focused on ROI-driven opportunities? Does my CDP specifically optimize use cases that are designed to enhance LTV, to drive ROAS, to really drive measurable revenue? And I think one of the challenges is this historically CDPs evolved in a time before Snowflake and the cloud data warehouses were popularized. So a lot of the use cases that come from CDPs are just plumbing. Get data from A to B. If that's a problem that you need to solve, then that's fine. But there are many, many other ways to solve that problem for far less money. So we really believe that CDP ultimately needs to exist as an application that needs to be incredibly close to business and marketing outcomes.
Okay, great. Now, Scott, you inherited Simon Data at Vimeo, but you had a central role in evaluating Simon at Zillow. Can you provide some guidance and some of your insight on CDP selection?
Yep. So to start, I'll kind of just back it up in terms of like what I'm looking for in a vendor just in general, whether it be CDP or whatever the use case might be. First and foremost is culture. That is at the very top of my list. And it's got to be partners who are easy to work with, and it's where you make each other better. I think we've talked a little bit about that earlier, where, vendors pushing the customer and vice versa. And it's that tension, the healthy tension, when that exists, that's like where the magic happens. Roadmap is another big one that I'm always looking for. I want to make sure there's a vendor out there who's ahead of what we need. And we as the customer are lagging them and occasionally pushing them, but I want them to be kind of dragging us forward and making sure that they're going to be growing with us and then not growing apart as we go over time. And then day to day, I'm always looking for a platform that's easy to use and it solves critical business problems. It doesn't create problems for me. And it's robust and reliable, so I'm not constantly having to troubleshoot it and kind of get sync up with their tech support. In terms of enablement, because marketing operations sits in between marketing and engineering teams typically, and they bias a little bit more towards engineering. They're highly technical. I do want platforms that allow my teams to be self-reliant and not have to rely on other engineers. So that way we can move faster. We don't have to get into their backlogs for prioritization, et cetera. And then the other one is just business impact. The capabilities, my team is being looked to internally to help support marketing strategies and business needs. And we need to make sure that all those capabilities are there to help deliver on that. You want to get specific and talk a little bit more about CDP. For data capabilities, we definitely want something that's going to run the gamut from a no-code solution so that we can go crazy fast in terms of working in the platform, all the way up to that full code solution so that we do have the flexibility to build something custom. And I like to look at that in kind of an 80-20 mix, where hopefully 80% of the time we're cranking on just the low-code version. But there's that 20% where we're trying to push the envelope, and we need the ability to basically get in there and write SQL if needed. Data also we need to be able to handle both asynchronous batch data for all your outbound type communications, as well as real-time events for inbounding on personalizing. Let's say someone calls into a call center, they're coming through a chat, they're on the website, trigger-based email, all those are great use cases there. And then This one's third. I probably should have put it first, but seamless integration with other vendors and our first-party infrastructure. That is having vendors that you can basically drop in with little to no effort on implementation and things just work, and they help connect your system and bring it together. That is just gold for us. Because I've seen quite a few where you try to get them in and get them implemented, and you're sitting there 6 months later and it's still not up and running because some platform is not playing nice with another platform somewhere. And then most importantly is scale and performance. Vimeo is looking to grow at a pretty exponential rate here over the next couple of years. We're in the middle of a pretty significant shift from being strictly B2C, getting into the enterprise space. And we're really starting to kind of get that strategy rolling, and the growth is going to be quite a bit. So we want data capabilities that are going to be able to scale in terms of both size of data and then most importantly performance, because we're going to be handling larger and larger data sets go forward, and we can't have the data sets taking longer to run than the campaigns are actually getting to get out the door. And then just a couple other key points just on general functionality as we're looking for platforms, CDPs in particular. Definitely more than just a single point solution. We're trying to minimize our vendor footprint. So we're looking for vendors who can come in and solve multiple problems and provide multiple use case support. Easily configurable and customizable. That's huge. No one really does off the shelf type stuff because everything is custom to whatever environment you're working in. So the ability to configure and customize is super key. Similar to the point solution, working across multiple activation channels, which really helps us because then we can create an audience one time and push it into 3 or 4 different places, and it's the same audience getting the same content, the same messaging. So it helps unify the customer experience. And then easy to set up and troubleshoot. So things always happen, whether it's our data or connectivity between platforms. There's always some kind of issue popping up. The ability to, one, know that they happened, and then have the data available so you can quickly troubleshoot and resolve is just super critical and important there. And then just like some general considerations, if I'm just looking, in terms of partnership with another company, pricing's big. It wasn't as big before, but with budgets being tight, pricing is definitely out in the forefront. And I know a lot of times you get what you pay for. So having the ability to justify a higher price point with the vendor when you're getting more out of them, super critical, but definitely pricing is getting a lot of scrutiny today. As already mentioned above, easy to do business with, super important. Like it can't be every time you go to a vendor and you want to try this out or you need help with this, it can't be that fight or battle where you're constantly going back and forth with them. And then going beyond being a vendor, just being a true partner, and this is that bi-directional relationship we mentioned earlier. It is the 1 + 1 = 3, where they're helping us, we're helping them. And then I guess most importantly, operations, and we have to deal with enough issues that we create our own or internal. So we really I'm looking for vendors who aren't a source of issues for us. I want them to be a source of solutions to help us solve problems.
That was great. Thank you. So yeah, the CDP architectures are changing rapidly, including composable and connected architectures. That was great. Thanks. CDP architectures, they are changing rapidly, including composable or connected architectures where the data never leaves the warehouse. David, can you speak to this evolution?
You bet. So I think there are 2 types of apps that live on Snowflake. One is a connected app where, some of these platforms, they've packaged their IP in a connected app and it sits on top of the customer's warehouse and it's parsing all of the data in that warehouse to deliver the capabilities that, we mentioned earlier in the discussion, in which things like activation, personalization, it provides all the features of the package platform. And then there's native capabilities or native applications where it uses our framework and the IP actually lives in Snow, and that app is deployed and it renders those capabilities. And I think, in terms of like package CDPs, I think, many had at some point seen Snowflake or the warehouse or the cloud as a threat. I think there were others like Mr. Davis who, had the vision to see that actually, more and more marketers actually want to have this more modular approach where, they might come to us and use us across all of our capabilities. And yet at the same time, they might have the need of another vendor that lives on Snow that they layer on top of what they're doing with Simon. And I think that really is a very progressive perspective. That's part of the reason that we're so appreciative of his partnership. Scott mentioned it, seamless integrations with other vendors that sort of complement Simon and unlock more value. And then Scott also said something around, hey, the 80-20 rule. Like sometimes we're just using tech that sort of runs out of the box, but sometimes we want to do some custom code that we're going to implement that's going to unlock more value. I think, that modularity and that ability to do custom tweaking or to use things that are ready to go and the time to value, that's part of the reason that we've seen sort of a gravitational shift to a composable or connected architecture. And I think it started a little while ago, and it started with maybe mid-sized marketers. However, I think it's really evolved into the enterprise marketers where they understand there's tremendous amount of power in a connected architecture, with connected apps or native apps, and what it's able to do. It's really graduated to another realm. I think we're seeing that traction in that sort of direction in the market, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. All right. How can companies seize real gains through a composable marketing tech stack? And Jason, could you elaborate on this and share some practical examples, please?
Yes. So, David, just sort of spoke to some of these benefits at a high level from an architecture perspective, but and I'm not going to get too deep into the technical details, but there are really just several high level benefits around as a marketer choosing to adopt a CDP strategy, which is composable or connected to your Snowflake or Cloud Data Warehouse investments. And the first is really one of unlocking data investments that already exist. I've talked at length around the opportunities to leverage 10 times more data for personalization and targeting, but there are also other technical benefits as well. If the data in your Snowflake is locked down and has requisite permissions, then why would you want to ship all that data out and recreate all those permissions again in order to actually have proper governance compliance when accessing your data? With a composable approach, those problems can be readily solved, as one example. Second bucket, we've talked at length around aligning data and marketing teams, and data movement is hard. Whenever you have data in one marketing system, and data that resides in your Snowflake, they're just going to require different formats. They're going to require ETL, which is ultimately just going to be expensive and costly and break and have operational challenges. Having a composable approach, is a big step forward around technical alignment, to make your processes and cross-team collaborations that much simpler. And the second bucket is really just a culmination of everything we've been talking about over the last 40 minutes or so, and that's really just where the rubber meets the road and why we're all here, and that's around affecting much deeper, more performant, multi-channel, personalized experiences. All the benefits around having the application live right at the source of truth for the highest quality and most complete data in your organization. It's a game changer.
That's great. Thank you. I'd like to talk some about putting all of this into action. Scott, can you share some of the wins that Vimeo has seen with Simon Data and Snowflake, please?
Yep, happy to do that. So give you just kind of, the punchline right there, 300% increase in trial conversions by optimizing our abandonment was huge. That's something that we haven't seen across many marketing programs, that type of lift. And it was a direct result of partnering with Simon on this. So just to give you a little bit of a business overview, most of Vimeo's revenue comes from subscription-based plans for creators and businesses. That base subscription is free And then there's paid subscriptions offering additional features and upload capacity as you kind of move up the tiers. And then users of a free account, they can trial the premium subscription for upwards of 7, or they can do it for up to 7 days. So the challenge is a large cohort of the free account users abandoned their first video upload and they never returned to the platform to start a free trial. So they weren't able to unlock and see the full capabilities of the platform. And we were running your standard abandonment campaigns, but the engagement rates were really low. And a lot of that was tied to the latency or just our ability to activate in a quick way. So we needed to find ways to get access not only to the data faster, but also more granular event data so we could personalize the messaging in an effort to drive improvements in our abandonments. So the solution to accomplish this goal, Simon and Snowflake came together with a unique solution to enable marketing to access the full scope of Vimeo's customer data within the Snowflake via Simon data, power abandonment campaigns by serving up real-time data and rich real-time data. And then we used Simon Data's unique connection with Snowflake, as we talked about earlier, the beta that we had in place, to experiment across customer segments to maximize the ROI of the abandonment campaigns. So Simon Data had the strongest experimentation capabilities and the most accurate real-time user data within Vimeo's Snowflake Data Cloud, and when it came to testing these send times for abandonment. And with Simon Data's direct connection with Snowflake, Vimeo is able to streamline our workflow and then get those big results that I mentioned earlier, the 300%, and do that quickly and, most importantly, easily. So the results are already mentioned earlier, but through real-time access to the granular customer data via the marketing-friendly user interface. And I want to underscore that marketing-friendly user interface because we did have a team of marketers at the time building the campaigns, not data engineers. That was amazing. We were able to personalize and optimize the onboarding experience for the free account users with those dramatic results I mentioned earlier of a 300% increase in conversions to the 7-day free trials. Simon Data's real-time support allowed us to build segments using their data that was not readily available with our current platforms, our test experiences, and it fed the resulting engagement data into our analytics systems for continued learning and optimization. So it helped with the feedback loop once we got the campaign up and running, and we constantly were tweaking and modifying as we were going. And that's something we're still doing today as part of this program. And then Simon's experimentation capabilities allowed us to optimize the timing of the abandonment emails to drive more engagement in the platform. So just one more example of not only were we able to reach out, but we were able to optimize when to reach out and what to reach out with, and all that together, along with the ease of use, is what led to the results that we saw there.
That's great. Thanks for going over all of that. And thanks to all three of you for providing so much great information. Now, we do need to hit some viewer questions, which have been coming in. So let's hop into that now. This first question, David, is for you. We've heard a lot of language around Snowflake support and ways of integrating. What are some of the differences between a standard SQL integration versus a data share versus a connected or composable integration? Can you distill this into something simple that I can understand?
Absolutely, or at least I can try. So think about a data share, and to those in the audience that are not, have no familiarity with Snowflake, a data share allows you to share a view of data without movement of data. And you can query that share, you can download it into your Snowflake account with the appropriate permissions. So some CDPs, what they will do, if their tech sort of provides that collection, they'll make that data available to the marketer through a data share. Often marketers are centralizing their marketing first-party data actually in Snow. So what that CDP will do is make all of that curated collection available through a share, so data science teams are able to sort of query that data or pull it into their Snowflake account and use it sort of as their golden record. And similarly, they can actually share it back to that CDP's account. Maybe they, onboard it into the CDP, which is off of Snow. Then there's the connected app or the connected approach where you have IP that is packaged in an app that sits on top of the marketer Snowflake account, and it unlocks some of those capabilities, the collection, maybe the personalization, maybe the activation. which is tremendous, and it pushes the compute into the marketer Snowflake account. And with that connected approach, you can actually layer in other technologies that may unlock more value. And then there's the native capability, where the IP of the CDP is actually packaged in a native app. It uses our framework, and that app is shared, and it does all of the work that the marketer wants of the CDP. It does the collection, it does the personalization, it does the activation. And those are sort of the nuanced differences of sort of outside of Snow and making data available through a share to a connected app to a native app. So when we talk about native capabilities, we like that the most. We lean into those partners the most because they're taking their proprietary IP, they're packaging in a native app that is shared to a marketer that makes sort of the value of that technology very accessible, if that makes sense.
That's great. Thank you. All right. Next question. And looking at our time, this is probably the last question we'll be able to hit. And I have a feeling all of you might have something that you can offer for this one. For businesses experiencing high growth and increasing data volume, how can you ensure scalability in your tech stack while keeping marketing use cases in mind?
I'll take a first crack at that one. I'll just try and keep it simple. Pick the right vendors. As I mentioned earlier, vendors that scale and grow and are constantly out there pushing the boundaries, it kind of solves itself. So, and it's, make sure you've got a great data vendor like Snowflake, and that'll solve the data collection, aggregation, activation, kind of all that stuff. And then make sure you've got great third-party tech stack that sit on top of it, like a CDP that can also help with other activation channels. And then, as the business grows and the data grows and all the other things happen, you've got great tech sitting behind you and great companies to partner with. It kind of isn't a problem.
And I think that was well said. I hearken to something that Jason said when he was talking about the CDP selection process. And I think he said, we'll ask them about their data strategy. I think that was very well said. And if they don't have one or they wobble on that data strategy, that's an issue. And I think increasingly, with where the world is headed and more reliance on first-party data, you also have to think about things like privacy and consent and making sure that you're not only operating within the letter of the law, you're also sort of allowing preference management, you're allowing personalization, and you're doing so in a way that's proactive and honors the privacy of the individual consumer. And you're doing it not in a way that's invasive, you're doing it in a way that unlocks more discovery. That's part of the reason that, and I've said this probably too many times, we're huge advocates of Simon, is we really think that they've had the vision to understand what Snowflake is trying to do sort of in the space and have leaned into it and really have totally evolved over the tenure of our relationship. And they're doing just tremendous things.
Well, thank you, David, and also Scott for the context on that. I think, as a data scientist and data engineer by trade, the data is just incredibly difficult. And everyone listening to this webinar will look at where they are in their data journey and they'll say, we need to get better. And guess what? You will get better. And then next year you'll say the exact same thing. Your data cloud is never filled up. It's never completed. Data is never 100% accurate. The question to ask is if you're trying to scale operations, have you picked the right set of technologies and organize your team properly to align with your first-party data assets and strategy in a way that truly allows you to scale? And if the answer is yes, then that involves picking the right vendors, having the right processes in place, and having the right ways of collaborating cross-functionally.
That's great. Thank you to all of you for hitting that. Anything else to add? Okay. Well, that is all the time that we have today. Audience, If we didn't get to your questions, don't worry, someone will get back to you via email. And I'd like to thank our speakers for joining us today. Jason Davis, co-founder and CEO of Simon Data, Scott Grove, Vice President of Marketing Operations at Vimeo, and David Wills, Industry Principal, Media, Entertainment and Advertising at Snowflake, for a great discussion today. So seriously, thank you to all three of you. And we really appreciate you sharing all of your insights and expertise with us. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. We hope to see all of you again soon, and have a great day.